Kai. Mane Kute no Yurei, the inviting ghost hand. Mane Kute no Yurei typically want people to acknowledge their presence and read a sutra in their honor at the local temple. Mane Kute no Yurei tend to gather around houses near temples, houses that they feel will be able to perform the desired ceremony. They might seem scary, but they are generally not that dangerous. This story is usually associated with them. An abbot was making a trip to Akiyama village when suddenly he hears footsteps behind him. As an abbot, he was particularly sensitive to a presence of a ghost. When he arrived at the village, the abbot prepared a copy of a Buddhist sutra. With this, he went back to the place he heard the footsteps and waited until dark. A white hand suddenly appeared out of the darkness. The abbot began to chant the memorial service for the dead. The Mane Kute no Yurei disappeared and was never heard from again.
Let's talk about a terrifying horror game involving a demonic secret that the Catholic Church wants to keep hidden. Our Lady of Sorrow. Full playthrough on the channel. Our Lady of Sorrow is one of the many names given to Mary, the mother of Jesus. But what does this have to do with the horror game? Well, the game itself is actually a secret tape that the Catholic Church is hiding from the public. The church claims that the footage is dangerous and should not be viewed by anybody. As you play through the tape, you discover that something is happening to the statues of Mary. And you learn that years ago, a woman who is thought to be a witch was burned at the stake right here at the church. Whatever was possessing her is still here. Explore both the grounds of the church and the crypt beneath to figure out what demonic presence the church is hiding. But the real secret and danger lies not in the church, but in the tape itself.
Mind-blowing cases of reincarnation, part 32. Sisters Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock were really close from an early age. Joanna loved taking care of Jacqueline and thought of herself as a really good big sister and kind of like a second mother. They both had a normal upbringing and seemed like very normal kids. One thing that was quite weird was that Joanna would always talk about how she would never grow up to be a lady and that she would always be a kid. Obviously, no one took her seriously at the time until something happened that made that statement quite eerie. On May 7th, 1957, when Jacqueline was 6 and Joanna was 11, they were having their routine walk to church with their neighborhood friend. While on their walk, a car came up behind them and purposefully hit them with the accelerator pedal on the floor. None of them survived. It turns out that the driver was actually a mother who had just lost her kids in a custody battle, so some people believe that she had the mindset of, if I can't have my kids, no one else can have theirs. She was eventually sentenced to a mental institution. Their mother Florence fell into a deep depression for a very long time, but their dad John, on the other hand, had a spiritual mindset, thinking they could be in heaven or could even be reincarnated. He started having visions and dreaming about his daughters coming back, and even felt a presence in their bedroom, which really upset Florence. Eventually, these visions got more intense and he started dreaming about the girls being reborn. Pretty soon after, Florence became pregnant again. The doctor confirmed multiple times that there would only be one baby, but John believed from the beginning that there would be two. Somehow, the doctor was wrong up until the day Florence gave birth. On October 4th, 1958, Florence gave birth to twin girls who they named Jennifer and Jillian. Everyone was in complete shock, except for John, who immediately believed that they were the reincarnation of Joanna and Jacqueline. Soon after the twins were born, they noticed something very strange. Jennifer and Jillian have the same exact birthmarks as Joanna and Jacqueline. On top of that, around the age of 3, Jacqueline had fallen onto a bucket which left a scar around her eye. Jennifer has the same exact mark. Once the twins were old enough to start talking, they talked about toys they had never seen that Jacqueline and Joanna played with before they passed. The toys they talked about were tucked away in the attic, and the girls were somehow able to describe them perfectly. John and Florence went upstairs, got the toys, put them on the ground, and the girls instantly began sorting them. They knew whose toys were whose and which ones were their favorites right away with no fighting. The girls also had the exact same foods that Jacqueline and Joanna had, and apparently they had the exact same mannerisms, personalities, and even the same walk as their sisters did. They even had the same body types. Jillian was a little more slender, similar to how Joanna was, and Jennifer was a bit more stocky, similar to how Jacqueline was. And although the girls were the same age, Jillian treated Jennifer like a mother figure just like Joanna did for Jacqueline. Florence didn't believe in any of this, but one day she heard the twins talking about their death and a car accident that they didn't experience. At this point, they actually didn't even know they had sisters, let alone how they died. John had apparently also heard them talking about it on a couple occasions, and when they would talk about it, they talked about it like they had already experienced it. The twins also had an unexplained fear of cars. They never learned about street safety and immediately knew to hold hands and look both ways before crossing the street. Eventually, word got out that something weird was going on with the Pollock twins, and psychologist Dr. Ian Stevenson became intrigued. He was so interested in their case that he ended up writing a case report on them, as well as mentioned them in a book he wrote called Children Who Remember Previous Lives. He actually went on to write 12 books on the subject of reincarnation and studied thousands of cases. Anyway, this case might not have the absolute most hard evidence that isn't just word of mouth, but to me, it's one of the most compelling, if not just one of the most interesting cases out there.
This is why you should never explore an abandoned tunnel under your house. A young couple recently bought their first house. They got it for a really good price because the owners had been missing for the last 12 months and the estate just wanted to get rid of it and move on. And while they'd bought the house under terrible circumstances, they wanted to move on and make the house their own and not think about it. And so, the first thing they wanted to do was get the back garden looking nice. There was an old shed at the back of the house that they wanted to get rid of and put a new one up. However, when they took the shed apart, they found a trap door underneath it. This confused them, as they couldn't understand why somebody had built a shed over a trap door, but regardless of this, they set to work on getting it open. One night, after days of trying to get it open, it finally flew open, and what they saw inside surprised them. It was a long, dark tunnel leading underneath their house. Regardless of this, they just assumed it was probably some old tunnel that was there before their house was built and then their house being built on top of it, so they decided to go and explore it. At first, it was exactly what they expected, just a dark, dingy, dirty tunnel, and there were no signs of anybody having been down here for decades. However, they decided to follow the tunnel and get to the end, but what they found surprised them. They found a red door that was slightly ajar and unlike anything they'd seen up until this point, and they could hear music coming from the inside of it. Both of them were incredibly creeped out by this, but they knew that they had to go in and see where the music was coming from. This is where everything changed, and they found a nightmarish gothic underground lair. The rooms were red and littered with horrendous paintings and into these nightmarish catacombs, the louder the music got. Some of the hallways had rooms off of them, and they checked them out and found bedrooms as if somebody was living down here. But they knew that they were getting closer and closer to the music. And that's when they saw him, a nightmarish 6'3" man with a skull mask on. They called out to him to ask him why he was down here, but all he did was grunt faster and louder as the machete by his side began to twitch. He then began to move towards them slowly, and this freaked them out and decided that they needed to get out, so they turned around and ran. They tried to make their way out of this underground lair, but it was so twisty and turny they couldn't work it out. They finally found the way they'd come in and were on the right path. But just as they did and they were about to get out, the wife fell over and tripped. The strange man was gaining on them, and the husband only had a split second to make a decision, turn around and help or run. And so, he jumped out of the tunnel and closed it behind him, and built a new shed.
This case will put you off dating apps for life. On November the 15th, 2017, Sydney Loof left her workplace to go on a Tinder date in Nebraska. After she failed to turn up for work the next day, she was reported missing. Sydney had originally agreed to go on a date with a girl called Bailey Boswell on November the 14th. Bailey had been using a fake name on the app. Sydney then went on a second date the day after with Bailey again. She posted a picture on Snapchat saying, "Ready for my date." When she was reported missing, police used phone records to track Sydney's phone. This led police to Bailey Boswell's house. So meanwhile, while this was going on, the owner of the duplex where Bailey rented her home complained of a bleach odour coming from the basement. The odour was actually so potent that one of the owner's family members was actually throwing up. On November the 28th, Bailey and her 52-year-old boyfriend, Aubrey Trail, were announced as persons of interest. Bizarrely, the couple went on a Facebook live stream to claim their innocence. They then ended up going on the run shortly after. They were tracked down and arrested 2 days later, and FBI tragically found Sydney's remains at the beginning of December. She'd been cut up and dumped along a gravel road in rubbish bags. Bailey got life in prison and Aubrey got the death sentence.
If you're thinking about ignoring your gut instinct, don't. Here are 3 reasons why you should trust it. BuzzFeed user Vodka Sunshine said that when she was in college, there was this really cute guy in one of her classes. A week or 2 in, they had to work together on a small project, and she was pretty excited about the opportunity to get to know him. After speaking to him though, she got a really bad vibe from him, but nothing specific that she could put her finger on. She said that she lost all attraction to him and knew that she should keep her distance. A month or 2 later, their teacher announced that the guy had been arrested for murdering a girl he was dating. Reddit user Helios21 said that he was at a club on a boardwalk with some buddies in Puerto Rico. He said that he just didn't feel right and he told them that they should leave. They fussed and moaned, but eventually they all left. Before they even hit the parking lot, a massive shootout broke out inside the club. The front door guy was shot to death and a few of the people inside were as well. It was literal pandemonium, people screaming and running everywhere. The ride back to their place was quiet, but they all knew they got really lucky that night. Reddit user BreakTD said that over 20 years ago when he was 17 or so, 2 of his buddies came to pick him up to get the night started. He got in the back of their car, but as soon as he sat down, he had a feeling of impending doom rush over him. He said that he had never felt that feeling before, and never felt it since. He immediately asked to be let out with some excuse and said that they would catch up later. He got out, and he said the feeling quickly faded, so he went on about his day. About 2 hours later, he catches up with some other friends, and they immediately tell him that the 2 friends that came to pick him up earlier were involved in a major car accident. Both were seriously hurt and in the hospital. The accident happened about 10 minutes after they tried to pick him up. They both survived. The car did not survive though. It was struck in the passenger side rear right, where he would have been sitting. Reddit user BreakTD said that he was pretty positive after seeing the damage done that he would not have.
If you see this woman on the street, do not try and help her. La Llorona hunts the night, doing the unthinkable to passengers. Her name was Maria. When she was alive and very young, she fell in love and started a family. Then had children, 2 little boys. Her husband, aka her baby daddy, would travel a lot for work, and he would always make it back home, until one day he didn't. He went out for milk and never came back. Just like my father. By the way, guys, quick update on Gizmo. He is no longer a baby. He has grown up into a man. Our child is growing up so fast. Back to the story. So since her man left and never came back, Maria became heartbroken. And that heartbreak soon turned to rage and anger. So she decided to take it out on the kids. She unalived both of them by drowning them in the river. When she came back to her senses, she regretted it deeply. She mourned for days and days until she decided to throw herself in the river. For that, she is now bound to wander the earth forever. Bro, I could live off mangoes forever. If you could only choose one food to live off of, what food would it be? Comment down below. I want to know who got good taste. People who have seen her said she walks around at night, crying for her 2 little children. Some people say that she'll even snatch up your children, confusing them as her own. So if I ever have kids and they get on my nerves, I know exactly who to look for. And I'm not finna lie. If she fine, I just might let her catch me. Hey, Miss Ladona.
Here's some more really fucked up movies where people get turned into animals against their will for all of you sick fucks out there. Starting off strong with Zombievers, where people get attacked by and turned into zombie beavers. This blows Avatar: Way of Water way out of the park. I'll show you a quick preview of the greatness that your eyes will be feasting on.
Sorry, I never ate your
It's okay, baby. We're gonna get out of here, okay?
It just smells so bad down there.
Next, we have The Lobster. This film revolves around a dystopian society where people are only given 45 days to find a romantic partner or permanently be turned into an animal of their choice. Now, personally, I wouldn't want to be turned into a lobster unless I was on the Titanic when it sank. I think I'd love to become a tapeworm. What about you guys? Let me know in the comments. Last but not least, we have the Human Centipede movies. I've talked about this franchise a lot. You know how it goes. Your mouth gets sewn to someone's butt and then you have to swallow their bowel movements and keep it pushing. I definitely troll when I recommend these, but if you're into that type of stuff, then you are probably no stranger to Reddit. What weirdly specific subgenre